Now let's talk about one past or many. As we spoke that you may have a different past, I may have a different past, and some third person may have a totally different past. We use the word pasts in plural because past, the history for everybody is different. So, for example, the lives of farmers were different from the lives of kings and queens and those of the merchants. Also, as it is true, even today people follow different kind of practices, customs in different parts of the world. So their history, their past, their stories are totally different from each other. Besides this, there is another kind of difference. We know a great deal about kings, queens, the battles they fought, their lives, what their lives were like, because there are proofs and inscriptions that tell us about their lives, their battles, and how they used to live. But what about the ordinary people? The hunters, gatherers, fishing folks, farmers, herders, they did not keep records of all these things. So, what they did was, while archaeology helps us to find out about their lives, but there is still so many things that remain unknown to us about the lives of ordinary people. Even today, people follow different practices and customs in different parts of the country, and that changes the past and the present of everybody depending on their lifestyle. Now, let's talk about what do dates mean. History is always about dates, that this event took place in 1947, this event took place in 1300s, 13th century. We'll talk about a lot of things as we go further. So what does these date means? Let's find out. These years are counted from the date generally assigned to the birth of Jesus Christ. So whatever dates that we assign, they are assigned to the birth of Jesus Christ, who was the founder of Christianity. So, for example, 2000 means 2000 plus years from the date of birth of Jesus Christ. All dates before the birth of Christ are counted backwards, and they usually contain the letters BC, which means before Christ. So, here are few important terminologies that are important to note. So, before Christ is the years that we want to denote before the birth of Jesus Christ. Then AD. AD means Anno Domini. This means the year of the Lord, the year when actually the Lord, the Christ was born. Then we have CE, which is the common era that we follow today. CE. Then we have BCE, which means before common era. Okay. And in India, we follow the BP system, which means before present. So, we do not compare it with the birth of Christ. Rather, in India, we compare it with the present, that what is happening actually and what happened in the past is compared with the present. So, we use BP. Now, let's talk about what was happening in the other parts of the world. We have learnt that inscriptions were inscribed on stone and hard surfaces. Many of these were inscribed several hundreds and thousands of years ago. All inscriptions, they contain different kind of languages and scripts. Languages which were used as well as scripts have changed over a period of time. They have evolved. The vocabulary has been refined. So, how do scholars understand what was inscribed at that time? We do not have those languages now. So, this can be done through the process of decipherment. So, this is a process through which historians, archaeologists and language experts can decipher, can actually make sure and understand the meaning of these old languages that do not exist today. One of the most famous stories of decipherment comes from Egypt. This is a country in north part of Africa where there were kings and queens about 5,000 of years ago. So here is one such inscription which has been deciphered by our historians. Do you see the use of symbols in order to actually state a story? So, Rosetta is a town on the north coast of Egypt, and here is an inscribed stone which was found, which contained different kind of inscriptions in 3 different languages and scripts. Those languages were two forms of Egyptian and Greek. Scholars who could read Greek figured out that the names of kings and queens were enclosed in that little frame, and this was called cartouche. They then placed the Greek and the Egyptian signs side by side and identified the sounds of which the Egyptians letter stood. As you can see, a lion stood for L, a bird for A. Once they knew what the letter stood for, they could actually start to read on the inscriptions and understand the meaning of what they were written for. So, what have we learnt in this chapter? We learnt about what is the past, how can we find out about past, what are the sources of the past, how did the early humans, they emerge in the Indian subcontinent, what did they used to wear, where did they live, how did they used to survive, what kind of food did they used to eat, etc. We also discussed about how did they used to travel from one place to another, what were the places and the early civilizations. For example, in India we had the Indus Valley civilization, and in Iran and Greek we had the Mesopotamia. Then we learnt about different kind of dates, how do we use dates in terms of history. And then we saw what happened in Egypt. So I hope you understood everything in this chapter. Thank you.